Welcome to the Covert Narcissism Podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. If a relationship is physically abusive, then you usually leave physically first. Your body knows it's in danger, so survival takes over. The emotions, though, they tend to trail behind like a stubborn dog on a leash. You see, they catch up later, after you've already left. But if the relationship is emotionally abusive, then this works the other way around. You leave emotionally first. Your heart checks out long before your body can escape this relationship or before your body can even pack a bag. You're still in the house, but you're already gone on the inside. And then here's the kicker: leaving mentally. That part can happen anywhere along the way. And honestly, it usually takes the longest. Even years later, you may still find them squatting in your head like an unwanted tenant who doesn't pay rent. So, today we're going to talk about these three different kinds of leaving: physical, emotional, and mental, and why each has its own timeline. Welcome back to the Covert Narcissism Podcast, where leaving is rarely just one door slam. It's more like moving out of your own body, your own heart, and finally your own head. And you're packing yourself up one single box at a time. This is not a one and done exit when you're dealing with a covert narcissist. I hear people say, well, why don't you just leave? I tell you right now, it's just not that easy. It is far more complicated than such a simple question. So if you're battling that question, either inside yourself or from the world around you, then this episode is for you. In a physically abusive relationship, the danger is obvious. Your body becomes the target, and your nervous system knows this. So you leave physically. You physically leave the house, leave the room, call the police. You do this because your safety depends on it. I've worked with women who tell me, I grabbed my kids, I grabbed a bag, and I ran out the door in the middle of the night. Sometimes there is no planning. Sometimes you haven't even called anyone and told them. Sometimes it's one terrifying event and survival takes over. But here's the part that most people on the outside don't understand here. You can walk out the door, but your heart and your head, they don't immediately follow you. Your body's gone, but your soul is still tied. And so you might still crave the good moments. You might replay the apologies. You might even feel guilty for leaving. Your heart is still there. It's still connected. The physical separation happens first, but this emotional and mental separation, that can take months and even sometimes it can take years. Think of it like slamming a door on a burning house and you're safe from the flames, but the smoke is still lingering inside your lungs. Now let's contrast that with an emotionally abusive relationship, especially covert narcissistic abuse. In these relationships, there's no bruises, no broken bones, no physical evidence to point to. Now, I do want to take a minute and say I do understand that some people are dealing with both. You've got physical and emotional abuse, they do go hand in hand. So I do recognize that, and that then you have to hit this with both, even physically and emotionally. But in an emotionally abusive relationship where there is no physical violence, in these relationships, the damage is invisible. It's even invisible to you. And it's the erosion of your self worth. It's the confusion and the self doubt because of all the gaslighting. It's the exhaustion of never being good enough, but yet trying so hard to be perfect. So, in these relationships, the safety that is threatened is your own self-worth, your own relationship with yourself. It's on the inside. And so you leave emotionally first. When you start putting into place survival skills, they happen on the inside. You reach a point where your heart just can't connect anymore and you're drowning in this and you find yourself thinking, I don't feel love here. I don't feel safe here. I don't even feel like myself anymore. I have a lot of people come to me and talk to me that they're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. So on the inside, they have gotten completely lost. And here's one of the painful parts about this: the world around you can't see this. And we've talked about that a lot in my podcast. Your partner still looks like the nice guy or the sweet wife. Your family might be shocked when you start pulling away and they wonder what's wrong with you. So the leaving starts very quietly. It starts on the inside of you. I remember a client saying to me one time, I was gone 2 years before I ever moved out. My heart had just checked out. My soul was empty, but my body was still in the house. I was still going through the motions, but I was not there emotionally. I had left. See, when you leave emotionally, you stop giving them your vulnerability. You stop oversharing your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions, your perspectives. You stop sharing your inner world because it's not safe with them. And if you're listening to this and go, okay, I'm already doing that. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. I was doing this long before I really understood the abuse that I was dealing with. You stop investing in the relationship because you've learned it's a bottomless pit. So you stop, even trying to help them, trying to explain things yet again, or trying to connect with them because every time I reached out to connect again, I was just taking another shot to my heart. So little by little, you begin pulling away emotionally. You start saying things inside you that you'd never say out loud to them, but things like, this is not okay. Things like this is abuse. Oh, I remember the first time I uttered those words inside my own head, and that was incredibly painful, but it was so freeing to finally say it. And when you're in these emotionally abusive relationships and you leave emotionally, eventually, sometimes years later, but eventually, the physical leaving typically does come and it comes last. Now, I'm not going to say everybody's got to leave. I talk about this often that I'm not an advocate for divorce. I am an advocate for your emotional, mental, and physical health. I am an advocate for your autonomy to be you, and that no one has the right to take that away from you. So if you can make peace in this relationship and find the way to stay, authentically you, then do it. By all means, I support that. And I've got clients who I work with that are working in that direction. But there are some situations where you just cannot. And there is a big difference between a marriage that is disappointing and a marriage that is destructive. Now, let's talk about leaving mentally. This one is the hardest because leaving mentally means finally kicking them out of your head. I remember thinking to myself, this was after the divorce. I don't remember how long after the divorce, but I remember when it finally occurred to me that I was thinking about this all the time. I was thinking about him. I was thinking about narcissism. I was thinking about the effect that it had on me, the effect that it had on my kids. I was thinking about where it exists in the world around us. I was thinking about this constantly. And I remember saying to myself, wait, if I wasn't thinking about narcissism all the time, what would I be thinking about? And I drew a blank. Like, I don't know. What do people think about when they're not thinking about narcissism? And I had to make a conscious effort to now kick this out of my head. And so, to be honest, for about 6 months, at this point I was running the Facebook group. I wasn't running the podcast yet, but I was a blogger and running a blogging. But for about 6 months, I stepped away from all of it. I just went, I got to take a break. And so I did. I put the Facebook group in the hands of some very trusted people, and I quit the blogging. I got ahead by a few, posts, and then I kind of left it to have a gap. And I walked away. And those 6 months really showed me that, you know what? There is life outside of narcissism. There are things to think about. There are things to do that have nothing to do with all of this. And it was a very enriching 6 months in my life. Well, then when I walked back in, everything looked different now. When I walked back into this narcissistic world, of course, not in a relationship, but in regards to helping people, the Facebook group, the podcast then came from this, that now I could look at it from a perspective where it was something I was studying, I was researching, I was reaching out and helping people with, but it no longer dwelt in my head like it had been that 100% of the time, squatting in my head. So you have to take some space mentally. I have people often tell me, I hate to say it, but I'm going to have to quit listening to your podcast for a while. In fact, I had somebody just recently say to me that Every time they listened to another episode, it was like they were pulling a scab off of an old wound. And I get that. If you need to take the break, take the break. Go find other things to think about for a while. I've got no problem with that. But along the way, you're going to get hit by more waves of healing. And when those waves hit, come right on back. Get a little refresher, listen in again, and then go forward with your life. Okay. There is life outside of narcissism. So let's go back to leaving mentally. You might have left physically, you might even have left emotionally years ago, but mentally, they're still in there. You hear their voice in your head when you make a mistake or when you do something, at least that they fussed about. You second guess yourself, wondering what they would say, and you've already got this whole argument now going on inside your head, even though they're long gone. You replay old arguments in your head going, okay, I wish I'd said it this way, or I wish I'd thought to say this. I'm going to tell you, there's no magic words. So you can replay them and go, oh, that one. If I had said that one, then maybe everything would have been okay. No, not if you're living with a covert narcissist. There are no magic words that are going to make this magically be okay. You're defending yourself to someone who isn't even in the room anymore. Some of this mental separation can begin while you're still in the relationship. You start catching yourself and you stop and go, okay, wait a minute. That's not true. That's manipulation. That's gaslighting. You catch yourself doubting yourself because of the words that they have said. And we make ourselves smaller and just accept what they're saying. That's part of this whole dynamic that plays out. But you start to do some of this while you're in the relationship, yes. But realistically, for most of us, this is the very last way that we leave is this mentally kicking them out of our head. You see, it takes time. It takes intentional work. It takes journaling. If you're ruminating and you've got these thoughts that just keep coming back in your mind and memories and old arguments, this is your system screaming at you to make sense of what you went through, to recognize it so that you never do this again, okay? What our body is built for is survival. And along with that survival is when you had a threat, your body wants you to remember that threat so that you never do this again. Okay, that's a simplified way of saying what's going on. And so when you're ruminating over something, it is your body and your mind and your system's way of telling you, hey, don't ever do this again. Don't ever get in an argument like this again. Don't ever make yourself small in a situation like this again. So when you've got these thoughts that are just ruminating constantly through your head, journal them. Write them down, document them. You're telling your body, hey, I'm listening. You're telling your long term memory and your subconscious mind, hey, I got it. I'm listening to this and I'm going to make notes so that I don't ever do this again. Start the journaling today. I cannot emphasize that enough. Now, other steps you can do for the mental work is therapy and coaching or whatever healing practices help you to reclaim your own thoughts. Leaving mentally is when you finally stop living by their script and you start writing your own. I had a woman tell me once, I've been divorced for 3 years, but he still lived rent free in my head. Every decision, I'd ask myself how he would react. And that's when I realized I wasn't truly free yet. My body was gone, but my mind was still chained to him. And so she began this journey with me where we started on the journaling and acknowledging and making list of the things you felt that were still your fault or that you felt guilty for and addressing those, dealing with those and putting blame where blame belonged on the ones where, that was appropriate to do that. And then she had the mental space to heal the other parts, the parts that were hers to carry. See, when you finally leave mentally, you breathe differently. You make choices without fear. Your body starts to relax. Their voice no longer runs your life. And that freedom, that one right there, that's the healing that we're after. Now, why does this matter? Because so many survivors of covert narcissism judge themselves harshly. And it's not just, to be honest, it's not just survivors of covert narcissism, it's survivors of abuse. If you're in a physically abusive relationship and you've left, then you start judging yourself going, why do I still miss him? Or why do I still feel connected even though I've left? So you've got to understand that you left physically, but you haven't left emotionally and mentally yet. And that's okay. That takes time. These don't all happen at once. If you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, then people start judging themselves thinking, why can't I just walk out already? Why can't I just leave? I see this as abuse. I see this is not okay. Why am I still here when my heart is clearly already gone? And if you've left both physically and emotionally, judgment's still there when the judgment is, why is his voice still echoing in my head? Why do I still keep hearing her words? Why can't I stop replaying all of this? This is the judgment that happens inside of you and can even come from the outside voices, your friends and your family, who are saying, why can't you just get over this? Why don't you just move on? I hear those words and those words just make me cringe because it's just not that easy. It's not that simple. It doesn't happen just because you left. If you've left the relationship, but you're still suffering mentally and emotionally, there's legitimate reason for this. So before we wrap up today, I want to give you practical tools for leaving. And I want to give you one practical tool for each type of leaving, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And something that you can start using today, no matter where you are in this journey. Okay. For leaving physically, if you're at the stage where physically leaving is on the table, the most important tool that you can have is a safety plan. This does not mean that you have to act on it right away. It simply means that having a plan gives you back a sense of control and a sense of safety. So, what is that safety plan? Write down a list of emergency contacts and let those emergency contacts know before the day you walk out the door. Let them know what's coming. Pack an extra set of keys. Pack your go bag. Keep that small bag with essentials, medications, copies of documents, cash if you can, maybe some food, even some water. And even if you never have to use it, just knowing you have it can reduce the fear and help you to breathe a little easier. For leaving emotionally, if you're in the process of pulling away emotionally, the tool that I want to give you here is creating internal boundaries. One way to do this is by practicing the phrase, that belongs to them, okay, him or her, that belongs to them, not to me. So when they accuse you of being selfish, of being too sensitive, instead of taking it in as a truth and laying it on your own shoulders, going, okay, maybe I am being selfish, or maybe I am too sensitive. I'm going to tell you right now, being sensitive is not a negative. So when they are throwing this stuff at you, remind yourself that belongs to them. That is their perspective. That is their projection. Sometimes that is a very much so a projection, but that's not who I am. If they are accusing you of being selfish, you can take the time to self reflect and go, okay, am I being selfish here? Reflect on it. Ask yourself honestly. And then as you make your decision on this and you determine, no, I'm not selfish, then hand that right back to them internally. You don't have to tell them. You can if you're in that position, but sometimes that can escalate things. But inside you, you can hold your truth and you could say, no, that's not who I am. I am not selfish. That's on them. That is their perception and that is their responsibility to take care of. This mental shift helps you to protect your emotional core so that you are not attacking yourself, doubting yourself, blaming yourself, even while you're still physically present in the relationship. Now, for leaving mentally. If you've left and they're still living rent free in your head, or if you're in the relationship still and they're rent free in your head, 100% of the time, turn their presence into productivity. Now, that may sound really weird, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I'm going to give it to you again because it's really a crazy tool and it works. Every time you catch them popping up in your mind, so you're rehashing an argument, you're making a new counter argument, you're criticizing your own choices based on their words, or just showing up inside your mind and you're just kind of wrapped up in all of this. Use it as a cue to do something positive. For example, you could pull out your phone and practice a level of Duolingo. If you're going to want to learn Spanish, you pull out your phone. And so suddenly their voice becomes your reminder to get better at Spanish. So instead of hearing, you'll never get anything right, you're learning how to say, El gato está en la casa. Okay. You can use it as a time to remember, oh, yeah, I want to work on my Duolingo right now. I did some of that and it actually ended up becoming kind of funny. I would laugh when here I am mentally telling him thank you. Of course, I would never say it out loud to him, but I would be telling him, "Oh, thank you. Yes, that reminds me. I need to work on my Spanish." Of course, now it's a little different now that I'm podcasting on covert narcissism because now when those thoughts come into my head, it's like, oh, yeah, thank you. Great. That's another episode. And so I just, my ex shows up in my head and here's a lesson that came out of it. So, it makes it productive. It turns this around into something productive. It's about flipping the script. If they're going to try and haunt your thoughts, then the least they can do is contribute to your personal growth or, your content creator if you're doing content, blog posting, and podcasting. So here's my encouragement to you: stop judging the order in which you leave. Stop judging yourself for why am I still here? Or why am I still thinking about them? Or why am I still so sad and I'm crying every day? Your brain, your heart, and your body are doing the best that they can to survive a bad situation. Healing is not about whether you left the right way. It's about allowing yourself to acknowledge the truth. This is abuse, and I do deserve better. If you've left physically, but your heart still aches, give yourself grace. If you've left emotionally, but you're still in the house, trust that you are already on your way out. And those people in your life that are saying, well, why can't you just leave? Let them know you're working on it, that you are. But you got to do this your way, one step at a time on your own timing. And if you've left both physically and emotionally, but their voice is still in your head, know that freedom is possible and that it will come with time and healing. It does take purposeful healing. Time does not heal all wounds. You've got to put some purpose into it. Leaving is not a moment, it's a process. And every step you take, whether inside or outside, is part of reclaiming your freedom. Your story matters, and you do deserve to be heard without judgment. So if you're ready to take your next step towards healing, whatever that next step is, and maybe you don't know what it is, but I'll help you find it, check out my coaching services at covertnarcissism.com. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more empowering episodes like this one. And as always, I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism Podcast, where we break apart the insidious nature of these incredibly destructive and infinitely frustrating individuals. If you are caught up in this crazy making relationship and drowning in self doubt, guilt, or rumination, please reach out to me anytime. I offer individualized live coaching in both group and individual settings. We can find the right program for you. You do not need to go through this alone. You can find all of that information on my website at covertnarcissism.com. You can also reach out to me by email at Renee, Renee, at covertnarcissism.com. I do look forward to hearing from each and every one of you. Remember, I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. I am a coach, and you are a survivor. The information provided by Renee Swanson, Covert Narcissism Podcast, and CNG Life Coaching is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. Renee shares stories from her personal experience as well as from those that she has worked with for several years. Her material does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or support a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and the information provided. Thank you.